What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you my first place Dark World profile. That's right, I took this to my locals this weekend. I ended up facing Raid Raptors, Yugioh, and then of course Fire King Snake Eye along with Fire King Tri Brigade as well. The deck did incredibly well for everything it needed to do. If I was going first, I was able to complete the hand rip more times than not, but on top of that I was able to end my board pretty strongly even if I couldn't complete the hand rip. The side deck put in a lot of work and I'll show you that at the end of the video, a little preview here, to show you exactly what we've got, and I'll take you through what I put in, what I took out, so you have a bit more of an understanding. With all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. I can't wait until we get the Fiendsmiths, but we've got to wait until May until we get that. However, hopefully a new ban list will shake up the format and I can then bring you another update for this deck as well, because it's one of my favourites just going forward, and sometimes it has to dip in and out of the format depending on what is being played. So we start off with the standard lineup on all Dark World builds that I've ever done is double Grepher, triple Genta, triple Snow, and then triple Rainbow. All pretty straightforward and simple on these ones. I don't think these will ever change no matter what version you are playing. These are just so integral for everything you need to. Yes, you do need to be very, very careful, because obviously if you go to a local environment or any environment and you're expecting Drow and Lockbird to either be mained or highly sided, you need to be careful when you're playing the Genta, because the idea is that off of the back of the Genta you're going to be leading yourself into another search. So it's a search for a search, which is the perfect opportunity for someone to droll you. So you need to be a little bit careful on that one. I got quite lucky at the weekend. I was able to dodge all of the drolls more times than not. When I did get hit with droll, I was actually able to go into a Bagooska to set up a very defensive play, and I still had stuff like Trill Tactics, Talents or Thrust to help me with one card in the side deck, but also one of the cards in the main deck to get advantage or hand knowledge of my opponent's hand, take away a card that I felt could break the board that I was trying to set up, and then was able to survive during the droll turn. Now obviously that's not always going to happen, but you do need to make sure that when that happens to you, as that is the biggest weakness of this deck, you have counters to it, which is why I put this build together. So carrying on with the Dark World cards, we are playing of course one Silver and one Cerulli. You can adapt this if you want to. Personally, I wasn't focusing on the hand rip. Again, I wanted to go for a balance, which is why there's no gold in here. There's no original rainbow for the ability to go into colourless. There's no gold. There's no second Silver or second Cerulli. The idea was that I would work my way towards the Cerulli, because 9 times out of 10, if you don't get drolled, you should have access to get to Cerulli when you want to. The only times you can't really complete the hand rip is if A, you misplay, B, you get hit with multiple hand traps, or C, you get drolled early doors. So you don't want to have too much reliance on the hand rip. And like I said, the ability of this deck was I was going to set up a strong enough end board with enough hand advantage that even if it got broken, I could crack back, or I was completing the hand rip, and that was enough for me to kind of win the door from that point on. Considering one of the cards in the main deck, you get to look at your opponent's hand, or technically 2 cards we're using in the main deck, lets you look at your opponent's hand, so straight away you can get rid of any threatening card that might harm your combo, and then continue to make your plays. As I was massively worried about Drow and Lockbird, I still stuck with my tech of the triple Kokimiru Guardian. The idea is that once you get to a phase where this is no longer useful for you on the board, you turn it into an Appaloosa, but you would have drawn enough cards that you may even have another Kokimiru Guardian in the hand to reveal to keep it on the board so that it acts as a negate during your opponent's turn. The best thing about this card, unlike some of the other options that are being utilised, stuff like Tour Guide, is it gives you the ability of going first and second. Now, because I'm not clashing any of my main deck normal summons of this entire deck, the idea is no matter what I go, if I see this card, I'm normal summoning it. If I'm going second, I normal summon it. It then provides me with a form of interruption that my opponent either needs to trade one of their negates for if they want one of their cards to go through successfully, or they're going to be able to negate the first negate that my opponent tries to make. So for example, if I'm going second and Droll is being main decked, and I go normal summon Kokimiru Guardian, unless they are playing something like a Solemn Warning, they're not going to stop the summon of this card. So then ultimately what it means is my first search will then be free, because I can then activate the Kokimiru Guardian to negate said Droll. Now obviously if they have a Baron on the board, again what I'm really doing here is I'm normal summoning down the Kokimiru Guardian, my opponent can't stop the Kokimiru summon, so then when I do go, okay, do a search card of some sort or another, that then gets me into my card. My opponent goes Droll, I'll go Kokimiru, and they then need to chain their Baron. So straight away I've used both negates off my opponent, or 2 forms of interruption for my opponent, and if I've gone with a 6th card, my Triple Tactics Frost is live, my Triple Tactics Talents is live, and I'm able to either steal, look at my opponent's hand, or continue to build my board where at all needed. For the dangers on this one, I actually went up to triple Mothman on this, just because I felt that even if I saw multiple Mothmen, there were times where it actually has more utility for me on the board to help me get into my rank 4s and help me get into a Bagooska. So there was a couple of times when you get drolled, and when you do get drolled, you can still reveal a danger because the outcome is never guaranteed. And the idea is that I would still try and get my monster to the board in order to then go into my Bagooska to slow the turn down. Now, obviously, it's very risky when you do that because every time you fail and you discard a card, it's never actually going to get you any more advantage off the back of it. So you do need to be very, very careful on that. On top of that, I felt that this was the best card for this particular deck, that if it failed or succeeded, to give me the most advantage possible. Yes, of course, you could play triple Nettie if you wanted to. I stuck with 2. I still feel that 2 is more than enough for this card. It does everything I need it to do. It searches me out a piece that I might need, but again, you need to be very careful because the dangers are the worst part in regards to Draw Unlock Bird. So the idea is that if you're going to activate a danger, or the worst time to actually have a danger in the hand is if you do a search first and then your opponent drolls you and then your hand is just full of dangers, which is where something like a Mothman kind of comes up. Because if I activate the Mothman, successfully summon it to draw a card, and then my opponent goes droll, all I need to do is get another level 4 from my entire deck, which can be Genta, can be Snow, can be a second Mothman, get it to the board, and then build my plays from that one. On top of it, it also does mean that if I do open up a Jackalope, for example, I can keep revealing the Jackalope until I do hit it and then get another Mothman from the deck, and that's a Bagooska to slow my opponent down. Like I said, that's not the ideal way you want to go about it because you will burn through your hand resource, but it is an option should you need to. Speaking of, we've got the one Jackalope, the one Chupacabra, and then the one Bigfoot. The Bigfoot is obviously the one that is more ideal for going second if it does fail, but you've got that balance of going first, you can still summon it out on the board. It's a level 8 that will help you get into a rank 8 that I am playing in the extra deck. I'll explain it when I get to it. But then on top of that as well is also a very nice boss monster that can be summoned from the deck through obviously your Jackalope, but it can also then be used as a boss monster when it hits the board successfully. Or if it fails, it lets you deal with a face-up card, which going first, because I'm not going to be siding or like maining cards to deal with floodgates, this can actually be an incredibly powerful card for dealing with a floodgate. Again, the exact same thing can be said. Like if my opponent flips a summon limit on me, I can keep revealing my hand until I hit that Bigfoot. That Bigfoot will then get rid of that summon limit and then you're able to continue your plays. Now again, like I've said, it's not ideal because you will burn for your resource, but if you get lucky enough that the one time you actually want your dangers to be hit, it gets hit, you then deal with that back row and then you're able to continue to build your board. Then of course we've got the one honorary danger in the form of Salamander Catalyzer. We've then got for the main deck of triple Fenrir. Again, this is just one of the most ideal cards that can set up a form of interruption for you. It can also help you set up the ability for going first or second. And what you need to be very, very careful of is when you're building the board, 9 times out of 10, you are pretty much filling up 4, if not all 5 of the slots. So when you're giving your opponent a Ceruli, you need to be very careful because that Ceruli can very easily become a relinquish anima quicker than you can say no. So you do have to be very, very careful. On top of that, that's where Fenrir can come into play because when you get to your end of your combo, as long as you can then use Ceruli, trigger its effects to then make me rip one from my hand, and if it's the last rip that I need it to be, I can then trigger my own Fenrir to banish my own Ceruli face down. Sometimes it's good to leave your opponent with that with that Ceruli, so that when you do look at your opponent's hand through any of the cards that we do choose to use it, if they do open up something like going second and evenly matched or going first with an imperm, you're able to deal with that straight away without you needing to worry about one of your negates because they won't be able to activate it while Ceruli is on the board. Then for the spells, of course, 2 Gate of the Dark World. I don't feel like I don't want to be. I'm never ever going to play 3, but through every build I've played, 2 has been perfect for me. So I know people play it at 3. If you want to play it at 3, by all means, please do so. But 2 is the perfect ratio for me. We've then got the 1 Accession followed up by the 1 Archives. And then, as you could probably assume, we went back to the Triple Tactics Frost engine of 2 Frost, 2 Talents, and then the other targets that Frost can search out being Card Destruction, Dark Corridor, and Drag Down to the Grave. Now, this was absolute massive MVP. Now, I've always argued against this because I don't want to be activating Drag Down so that they just draw into a draw anyway. But there's a couple of times where, specifically if it was game 1, it's very rare. Most decks will be playing Draw and Lockbird. Some main it, some don't. I'm not saying it's impossible, but some weren't main deck in Draw, which was very interesting to me. So when I was able to activate Drag Down to the Grave, you have to do it at a point where you feel comfortable showing your hand, because when you give them that advantage, you want to make sure that you're going to use every single card in that hand so that you get a full fresh card or a full fresh hand so that they don't have any advantage on you, but you have all the advantage on them. The best thing about this is when I was activating Drag Down early in the play or early in the turn, yes, of course, I let them see 4 cards, but the cards that they were seeing were all dark worlds that were going to get me some form of advantage or not. So I never really lost that when I activated Drag Down. Then when I was able to look at my opponent's hand, I was able to take away the key part that they might have needed in order to build the board. Yes, there was the risk that if they drew into a second copy, that is what it is. You kind of had to continue to play. But the other is activate drag down, see a Nibiru, get rid of it. Activate drag down, see an Ash Blossom that felt that could stop something, get rid of it. See a Droll, get rid of it. It was very, very important because then as soon as I got to my Ceruli, if I was then able to get to either Frost or Talents, ideally Frost into Talents or open up the Talents and then Frost into a Card Destruction or a Dark Corridor, I was able to look at my opponent's hand again and take another one from it. So straight away, I'm getting that hand advantage. I know the new card that they've drawn off of drag down because of Triple Tactics Talents, and then I'm able to reduce their hand even more so. So either I'm completing a complete hand rip of 5 utilizing Triple Tactics, and then they're top decking, trying to use my Ceruli in order to build a board, trying to go into something like an SP Little Knight, which I'm going to be able to very easily stop or make sure it doesn't happen. And then on top of that, more times than not, when you do complete your hand rip, more players will just scoop it up and pass on. Then you need to be careful because going second, the idea is that my Frost could get me the Talents, or my Talents would then become an incredible bait out. Once they've activated a card effect, I'm either stealing, looking, or drawing. More times than not, I was stealing or looking, because then when I was activating my Frost, I could then get to a Card Destruction or a Dark Corridor, or even a Drag Down in order to get even more advantage and take away everything I needed to. So more times than not, the first target off your Frost, if you get hand trapped, as long as they've got a monster on the board, is going to be Talents, so you can look at your opponent's hand. If not, you're probably going for a card that was going to be utilized for the follow-up turn. But the idea is that when you're activating this card, more times than not, you're doing it when your opponent has a monster on the board. So you do need to be very, very careful. And that's where the side deck comes in. So in the side deck, more times than not, you can probably bet that more of your opponents will be siding in Droll and Lockbird. So the consistency rate of Droll and Lockbird being in the deck goes up massively. So that's when you need to be playing a card that counters that. More times than not, if you are going first in game 1, or if you win game 1 and you know you're going to be going second in game 2, you're not going to be siding that trap card in, you're going to be siding in your board breakers, which is what I'll take you through when we show you the side deck. Speaking of, I might actually show you the side deck now, and then I'll show you the extra deck at the end. So, just as a note, anyone watching now, I'm not showing you a 60 card version, this is the side deck. So for your board breakers, if I felt that the Quackimiru Guardian wasn't going to be enough for me, or my opponent was producing towers in the form of stuff like Raid Raptors, I would very easily go for a Lava Golem. Now it's very tricky for Raid Raptors to not put more than one monster on the board, so being able to go into Lava Golem was massively helpful. Obviously, the issue is when you do give your opponent a Lava Golem, you are then wide open for a Droll and Lockbird, so you do need to be a little bit careful. More times than not, you might want to try and bait out one of your opponent's effects, activate Talents, or you just activate Drag Down in general. Look at the hand, take away a draw if it's there. If not, Lava Golem them, job done. For the other board breaking kind of combo pieces, I was going with Triple Nibiru. So these were the only monster effects that I was playing, or the monsters in the side there that I was utilizing, and technical hand traps. I feel that when you're using stuff like Nibiru, when you're using stuff like Lava Golem to me is just one of the biggest board breakers for a particular deck like this that doesn't use its normal summon. If you still wanted to maintain your normal summon being Quackimiru Guardian, you could very easily put in Darkworld. I forgot what it's called now. Dark Rule No More. Wow, how did my brain go dead on that? Dark Rule No More. Oh, let's take a minute to wake up the brain on that one. Whew. Anyway, you could play Dark Rule No More instead of the free Lava Golem. Now, the idea behind that is that you'd make sure you're going to want to be using and maintaining your normal summon, because Lava Golem doesn't allow you to do that the turn you summon it. But the idea is when you give your opponent a Lava Golem, you can then bounce it back with something like an Akashic, and then Lava Golem them again. So even if they have stronger monsters on the board, if they're not going to interact with you and they're just towers, so let's say the Raid Raptor went for the triple towers, more times than not when they go make the triple tower monster, they're also going to be having a Link 2 on the board. So you just go Lava Golem, get rid of 2 towers, bounce it back, Lava Golem again. That's it, I don't need to worry about it anymore. And then Nibiru pretty much speaks for itself. For the board breakers of the spells, of course, you've got your 2 Lightning Storms and your Duster. All of these are searchable off of your Triple Tactics Frost. And then 2 Cosmic Cyclones for those times when they hit you with a Floodgate early doors, or they are sitting on a card that you don't want them to be activating, so you hit it before you even get to a Lightning Storm or anything else. For example, if I know my opponent has set Super Poly in the Yubel matchup, I'm going to be targeting that. If I know they've got Eternal Favourite, I'm going to hold this back so that when they try to use Eternal Favourite to fuse with my board, I hit them with a Cosmic Cyclone, and then straight away that will fizzle. For the trap cards, I went with 2 evenly matched purely because it was settable and searchable off of the back of Frost. Now, obviously, you can make this a 3 of if you wanted to. This just kind of worked out nicely for me for a 2, because it was like they activate an effect to negate one of mine. I go, okay, cool, Frost search out evenly, break the board, off I go. And then, of course, I got the 1D barrier because, like I said, I was worried about branded Raid Raptors and Yubel, so this put us in huge work for that. And it's one of them ones that if they do hand trap me early doors, alongside the next card I'm going to show you, the Eradicator virus, I had two very good options that I could set. So for example, in a branded matchup where I feel that Eradicator isn't going to be that great against them because they can then just obviously normal summon a monster, search out Branded Fusion and keep going, I'd probably go for something like a D barrier. But in a matchup where I felt that we're going all control in the form like a Labyrinth matchup if I did face it, or a Yubel matchup that does rely on stuff like Super Polys, Nightmare Pains and everything else, Eradicator could be a little bit more effective for me than a D barrier because they can go into links or fusions as well. So that's that's the side deck. Now to show you the extra deck. Pretty staple on the extra deck in my opinion. Not really a lot has changed apart from going back to a good old favourite. So we're going to be starting off with 2 Greffar Overlord Dragon of the Dark World. Pretty standard on that one. And then we'll work down on our links. So we've got the one Underworld Goddess, you've got the Skull Dread, you've got your Appaloosa, and then we've got the World Sea Dragon Zelantis. Now the reason it's so good to bring this back, yes, people are familiar with Zelantis now because of the Fire King structure or the Fire King plays, but a lot of people actually forget how you lock yourself under Zelantis with the Muckrocker. So even if they don't forget, it's still an incredibly powerful combo because you go go into Saruja, draw your fresh hand. Obviously, you need to not be on the draw. Keep that in mind. But then the idea is you would turn Saruja into Zelantis. Then you'd make 2 monsters. One that would have been specialed off of the Skull Dread and go into Muckrocker. Muckrocker, discard a card, bring back any of your Darkworld monsters. Then what you do is you activate Zelantis, nuke the entire board, bring only Fiends back to the board. And then if you've got your Dark Worlds of Greffar and Rainbow in the graveyard, you're just bouncing back all of your little monsters and then bringing out your stronger monsters as well. Really, really important, great board breaker, and a lot of people don't expect it, so it's still incredibly powerful. And then, of course, we've got the SP Little Knight, the IP Masquerena, Dart the Dark Charmer, Kasich, standard. And then for the XYZs, the Spice of the Nice is Dingirsu. Now, of course, you could play other rank 8s if you wanted to, but the way that I kind of felt with it was by the time I'm making my rank 8 play, the Galaxy Photon Lord isn't going to be that effective for me to enable to negate any particular type of informative hand trap. So I went with a Ding just because, again, when I'm looking at some of the matchups that I might have been facing in the form of stuff like Yubel and the stuff like the Fire King matchup, being able to non-target send certain cards can be massively, massively helpful. Now, this is a flex spot. You can put any card in here that you want at all, the exact same with the rest of the extra deck, play around with it if you want to. But I just felt that Ding was one of those last-minute cards that I thought, okay, this will be actually very effective for me in the matchup, because as soon as I get 2 level 8s on the board, of course, if I haven't already exhausted loads of my resource, my normal summon and everything else, my opponents very rarely are they going to try and Yubel me. So that's when I'd go, okay, cool, make Ding. And as soon as I make Ding, it now then threatens them. Because I don't target, it now means that they go, okay, well, I need to activate my Eternal Favourite now if I want to. If they don't have a Yubel on the board, they need to activate the Eternal Favourite to revive from the graveyard. If they've got a Super Poly along the back row, they need to use that now. Otherwise, I could send their Yubel if they've already used their Eternal Favourite. So it's one of the ones that just gave your opponent a headache because it didn't give you a guaranteed confirmation of what was going to happen. On top of that as well, its non-destruction effect or protection for your board can be very, very important sometimes, but it was more so for that non-target send, which put in a lot of work. And then for the last 2, of course, we've got the one Bagooska and then the one Daguerres. Bagooska is actually massively helpful, again, if you got Drolled. So I got Drolled a couple of times, but like I said, I was either able to get into Bagooska or I was able to activate talents because I hard drew it to look at my opponent's hand, take away any particular card that they needed or any particular card that would have helped them break a board, and then set up a Bagooska. And I was like, for example, activate talents or drag down, look at their hand. Obviously drag down, not under Droll, but the idea is look at their hand, see an imperm, take that imperm away. Now it's like, okay, well, if they top deck an imperm to negate the Bagooska, so be it. If they don't, Bagooska is more than enough to actually slow them down for the entire turn so that when Droll runs out on my turn, back to their turn, and then back to me again with a fresh kind of route without needing to worry about Droll. And I would have already seen their hand, so I knew that unless they top deck to Droll, I wasn't worrying about it. I could then go, cool, Bagooska into attack mode, build my place from that point on. Not to mention, you could actually leave Bagooska into defense for quite a while, because as long as you're activating all your cards in the hand and they're all resolving from the hand or resolving on the field, they're not getting negated by Bagooska. So then that allowed you to go, cool, danger, summon, draw, danger, summon, draw. And then once you got to a point where you either wanted to shift Bagooska to attack to help you put up enough damage on the board, or if you wanted to link it off, you were still in a good position to do so. And it did mean that if your opponent was to draw you at any particular point you were activating your dangers, you just went, okay, whatever, I've now got dangers in defense, or I've got 1 danger in defense, I still got Bagooska in defense, pass. And you were able to survive another turn, basically walling up a little bit as well, which was massively, massively helpful. Anyway, that is it for the entire profile. I hope this has given you a bit of an idea of the deck and gave you more of an in-depth understanding of what I was playing and what I was utilising. Like I said, if I was siding in for going first, I'd be putting in Eradicator or D-Barrier because I was already playing the talents. And I would also consider possibly putting in Nibiru depending on the type of matchup, that if I did get drolled, I had the crack back of this card should I need it. If I was guaranteed to be going second, I would definitely be putting in Evenly Matched and Lava Golem. And then if I felt that my opponent, or if I knew my opponent was playing a heavy control build or was going to be putting in some Floodgates, for example, in the Yubel matchup, obviously they have Super Poly and everything else, but they might also be considering playing Anti-Spell Fragrance. So that's why I might consider Cosmic Cyclone. If I didn't think they were going to play Anti-Spell or any particular hard level Floodgate, then obviously you'd go for stuff like Lightning Storms and Dusters, and that just gave you the ability to break the boards. When you were taking cards out, what I would do is I would reduce the danger lineup so that my focus on the one draw or the one effect I was activating was coming off the back of Drag Down to the Grave. So I got to see my opponent's hand and then ran the risk of, if they drew the out, they drew the out. It just is what it is. So you'd focus on your Drag Down to the Grave. You would definitely cut down a Mothman just to see how it worked for you. Your Quackimiros was obviously the easy outs for your Lava Golem, so a very straight direct change on that one as well. And then you could, if you wanted to risk it, is you could cut down your talents by one. I would do this more times than not if I was going first, and then this would be my very easy swap for either the Eradicator or the D-Barrier, because I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to activate Frost on my opponent, more times than not, if I'm going first, if I can't give them my monster and they droll me, I'm going to want to use my True Tactics Frost to get to a Eradicator or a D-Barrier rather than a Talent, because this is going to have no use to me if I set that on that point. So that was a very easy swap out as well. And then you could consider stuff like your Fenrirs, but I still feel that Fenrir being special summon to the board, obviously don't special summon Fenrir and then use this effect right away. You special summon Fenrir and then go, okay, cool. Make your first search, because then the worst case scenario is if they do draw you, you go, okay, well, I've still got a Fenrir to defend my board at the very least, and then an additional monster on it as well. So that's it for the entire breakdown. I hope this is giving you, like I said, as much information as possible, give you a bit of an insight into the play style behind the deck, what you could do a little bit differently, what you could change up in order to make it work, and how you can side correctly in specific matchups. If you don't have any questions at all, by all means, please put in the comments down below. I will be more than happy to answer them for you. But for now, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.